I think, hello. We will introduce you shortly. I'm going to assume you're Travis. Yes, lovely to meet you, and I'll introduce you shortly. Good morning, everybody. It's been such a long time since we were all together. For those watching, we were together last night. Welcome to Committee of the Whole for June 13th, 2023. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today in Kispuutwik, one of the 7 districts of Mi'kma'ki homeland of the Mi'kmaq people. We acknowledge the treaties of peace and friendship, and we thank the Mi'kmaq people for their generosity in sharing their homeland with us. We're all treaty people. And before we move to the agenda, I would like to introduce, I've got my notes, Corporal Travis Collins. Lovely to meet you. If you stand up, everybody can see you. Travis is the acting senior ops it will be the people we've met, so welcome. I would love to have a chance to chat with you, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Do you want to just come up and just say that? I'll be your tag assistant today. Good morning. Yeah. Barbara, I think you made it this school. Is it running? Yeah. Right
on the top.
We're gonna be the other tag assistant.
You're the understudy?
The dream team. This is actually a musician. Thanks, Devin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the invitation to come speak with you today. It's an absolute pleasure. So as I was introduced here, new to Kings County, just in the professional sense. I actually grew up in Kingston, just down the road. And Mike, if you get into a little bit of background, I started out after my undergraduate degree. I went out to Alberta. So I did 6 years in Alberta. I spent the last 5 years in Nunavut. So I did 3 years in Rankin Inlet, just off the coast of the Hudson Bay there. And then I went over to Iqaluit, got into serious and organized crime, and then had an opportunity to come back into Kings County. So I'm very excited to be here. Myself, my wife, and my 2 small children, we live in Wolfville, just down on Olson Court there.
Oh, you're my neighbor. I know you. I know you.
Yeah. I think they learned to bike right on your road there. Yeah. So that's them, Catherine Thomas. You can holler at them the next time you see them whizzing by.
Nice. They are lovely children.
Right. But yeah, so I'm very excited to be able to work with the town of Wolfville. I hope personally to be able to throw an anchor out, as we say in the RCMP, and stick around here for a lengthy amount of time. I've had an opportunity to meet Aaron and some town councilors and your compliance department as well. So, and a few community groups, the Good Neighbors group. So as well, I met with them last week to kind of just address some of the concerns that are happening in your community. So I really hope to be able to keep the momentum rolling there, and to keep the pressure on from our end as well, to make sure that we're meeting all of your expectations and we're being great partners in this community. So look forward to working with all of you and speaking with you further. And thanks so much. If there's any questions. Okay.
Well, thank you, and welcome. And this is very weird for me, because I do know your kids, and when I walk my dog by you, we wave to each other, but I didn't know it was you. That's wow.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right. So now you'll see the police car up front.
I knew that there was a police officer there, but I knew that the house was not always in trouble. There's a police car, but anyways, well, lovely, really lovely to meet you.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Oh, overclamped. All right. I would like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda, please. Councillor Ingham.
I would move the agenda be approved as circulated and/or amended.
Great, thank you. We are going to, yes, I will call for a seconder in a moment, but we're going to Councillor McKay has a busy day. She had WBDC meeting this morning and prep for this afternoon's AGM. And she has another commitment at noon. So the parks discussion is very important. So we're going to move that up on the agenda at the beginning of staff reports. Are there any other changes to the agenda? A seconder, please. Councillor Butler. All right, we'll get you next. Councillor Elliott. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I would also note that up there on the screen is Deputy Mayor Madeira Voss, and she is joining us virtually today. Did I call the vote? Yes, I did.
Yes,
All right,
yes.
sorry. I got confused with all the excitement of this morning. Could I have a motion for approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes of May 2nd, 2023?
Do that.
Sorry.
I would move that the minutes of May 2nd, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
Are there any errors or omissions?
In camera.
We haven't done the in-camera one yet. What's next? Right. So we have a mover, a seconder, Councillor Palmadier. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? You can see I've been away for 2 weeks. I'm out of habit. All right, that's passed. And now Committee of the Whole in-camera minutes for May 2nd, 2023.
I'll
Councillor
keep
Ingham.
going. I would move the minutes of May 2nd, 2023 Committee of the Whole in-camera meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
And a seconder, Councillor Elliott. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. And finally, Special Committee of the Whole minutes of May 25th, 2023. Councillor Ingham.
I would move that the minutes of May 25th, 2023 Special Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Elliott. Are there any errors or omissions in those? Councillor Ingham? No. I did mention 3. They're just minor edits. Much as I like being Mayor Wendy, I have to change that to Mayor Donovan. And there were a couple of little other edits that I have already shared with our clerk. So if there are no others, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is passed as well. Now, we have a presentation. You will see on your agenda that Brianna Sangster, Physician Community Navigator Stakeholder Update and Presentation. We did receive that, Council did receive that presentation, but Brianna will not be with us this morning. So it's my pleasure to introduce Andrew Garrett. I think most of us know Andrew from Valley Waste for a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I did the presentation.
You need to push your
Sorry.
button.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I am here on behalf of Valley Waste Resource Management. I did want to speak to you all on the cleanup. I heard you had some challenges with spring cleanup this spring, so I just wanted to kind of address that, give you some background on scheduling and why they are how they are. And I guess some things we can look to in the future to help address some of these concerns. But I'm also open to talk about anything solid waste, throw at me. I'm happy to speak to it. So I do need to share a screen, right? Okay, so just to give you a high level background of solid waste. So Valley Waste manages solid waste on behalf of the entire Annapolis Valley region. So that includes, we have 6 member municipalities. So Wolfville is one of those, but Kings County, Kentville, Berwick, Middleton, Annapolis Royal are other member municipalities. Plus we provide services to 3 First Nations communities, Glooscap, Annapolis Valley, and Bear River. All of those, that entire area is under a single collection contract. So one private contractor bids on that every 5 years, and all of that's under, and one contract, and that's a great benefit. Gives us economies of scale to get good, efficient solid waste collection. We also have a non-member jurisdiction in Atlas County. So at one time they were part of the Valley Waste Board. Currently, they're with us under a service contract, but we're still managing everything on their behalf as well. They have the same contractor, so it's the same contractor servicing the entire Annapolis Valley. What that looks like is about 43,000 dwelling units. Dwelling units, a house, an apartment, or business, and a population of roughly 85,000. So you're looking at an entire region all on the same cleanup schedule, basically. Okay. Our goal as Valley Waste, it's always been provide an equal level of service on a region-wide basis. There's kind of three pillars we always go by. Fiscal responsibility being a big one. The economy of scale I spoke to helps with that. But we also want to make sure we have programs that are socially acceptable, environmentally sound. That's always kind of been our three pillars with which we make decisions on. So under Valley Waste, the board, they approve a budget every year that covers all the core services for solid waste. That includes bi-weekly collection, 2 bulky waste collections, so spring and fall cleanup, our 2 transfer stations, the operation of those, and access for our citizens and businesses to use those. And then we have a whole bunch of ancillary services like education by law enforcement. So those are the things that are provided to everyone on the same equal level of service. Now, that said, and this is what happened in Wolfville, is individual municipalities can supplement the services Valley Waste provide on their own. So we have a few examples of that. In this case, you folks provided a separate collection for some of the cleanup material. Some towns pick up yard waste separate from Valley Waste or Christmas trees and so on. So this does happen from time to time, but that's outside of Valley Waste and outside of our budget. Okay. So spring cleanup is really what I wanted to address. So for those that have been here for a long time, including myself, we used to have 20 some years, but cleanup for the first probably 15 or almost 20 years, we have a 6-week time period we have to get cleanup done. So it's the middle of April, which is hopefully when all snow melts. There's 1 year we had to move it, and then we have to be done before Apple Blossom Festival starts. That's kind of our drop dead date. So we have a 6-week period to cover the entire Annapolis Valley. At one time, we had 2 zones. If you remember, there was a zone A, zone B. It was on your regular collection day. Towns had their own day throughout the middle week. And that worked for the most part, but there were some challenges. We had over 20 years, population, demographics, areas get developed, it changes. We had some areas where we're collecting well into the evening, and other areas were done at 2 o'clock. So it was really an opportunity for us back in 2020 to look at the entire region and try to balance out that amount of material collecting every day, and for the staff as well, right? We don't want to be working overtime on the days that we're running late and so on. At the same time, Annapolis County left, so we lost 20% of our membership, right? So that was when we went to tender in 2019, I guess it was, we said, look, we want to, number one, switch to a 4-day collection week. That gives us, we don't have to work any of our staff on holidays, and it gives us all these extra days in case we have storms and so on, right? Extra days to collect. We also had an issue where when it was on the same day as regular collection, and this was a big issue for our contractor, was there's not a lot of space everywhere. So you have cleanup and regular materials mixed together. It's not easy to collect that way. It was a hazard to them. They can't, sometimes they wouldn't get one or the other, and we had issues there. So it was really an opportunity for them to develop a new system. So we went out to tender. We had 3 very competitive companies bid on it, the 3 biggest ones in the province. And they had the option to create a whole new collection schedule for the valley on that 4-day week and group all the areas. So now so at one time Wolfville was split into 2 different collection days. Now you're 1 day and you're grouped with everything around you, Avonport, Gasper Valley, Hansport. Way more efficient from a contractor perspective. And cleanup was to be provided on the off week with no set day. And that gives them the flexibility to balance out the weights every day coming in, and gives them a lot more flexibility and us a more efficient and lower cost system, okay? So with that new schedule, it really gave us two options for Wolfville. The last week of April or second week of May, because it would have been on your off week, because your regular day is that first week of May. We actually deliberately went, we actually thought the best case scenario for Wolfville in this case was to have you at the end of April and hopefully capture most of the student move out. We knew that that was a big issue for you. Most students are gone by then. We're hoping we could capture it. The other option was the middle of May, which gives us two problems. You do still have students moving out in the middle of April. And we know how hard it is to chase them after they've left to get all that stuff off the road. So you have material out 2-3 weeks easily at a time ahead of collection. And also you have convocation in the middle of May. We didn't want to get into that either. So we actually purposely put you on that week, thinking it would be the best case scenario for you. So that said, there are times over the history, like over the 20 years, even on the old schedule, where it would drift into April and sometimes we get pushed back in May because the calendar always moves up a day, right? And every couple of weeks or every 10 years or so, we push it back 2 weeks. So not the perfect scenario. Now, going forward, our current contract expires in the end of March 2025. We actually have to go out to tender this fall. It takes over a year for new contractors to get equipment, so on. So we flagged, this scheduling as an issue, and Atlas County will be back under the same contract. So that will give us an opportunity to look at the scheduling again. So can't promise anything, but we can look at that and help address. Wolfville is not the only one that has concerns with cleanup. We have other municipalities that don't like their day either, but again, it's the systems to try to make an efficient system for all of the valley. Now, that said, whenever we do make a change in schedule, it takes years for the public to adjust. I can assure you that. Even it's been 3 years on this one, and it's still people don't understand the new schedule, right? So every time you change it, it literally takes 4 or 5 years for them to adjust. Another thing we'll be putting in our proposal, I can't guarantee it based on the feedback, but a lot of areas of the province have gone to bulky waste collection every 2 weeks of 2 items. We think the vast majority of people would love that service. I think it's a heightened level of service. It may not address large move outs at one time, though. It won't address it. So, but it's something we're going to get pricing on and consider. Now, that was my last slide. Now, we did meet with landlords, myself and one of our educators a couple weeks ago, Aaron as well, and Caden. Good conversation. I think they understood our reasons for the schedule, and we understand their frustrations with move out time. So some things to help address things, we're going to increase some education and attend, get what it's called, but you have a street fair at the beginning of the year. There's also the welcome week at Acadia. Do some door-to-door visits as well. Like, we are committed to helping with that, to help with the scheduling. We have an app that is really popular with that demographic that will tell them exactly when their cleanup day is to get material out. So we are going to try to work on things going forward, but changing the schedule is not an option until the end of this contract. So I guess that's what I wanted to share with you on cleanup.
Will you entertain questions?
Of course.
Yes, members of council, any comments or questions? Councillor Palmer.
Well, it's kind of the obvious question. For next year, 2024, like the 29th is so where are we next year? 29th of April. is
You
the
will
first.
again be into that last week of April. So
So we're gonna
probably
overlap again next year.
it'll be at the end of April. Yeah. Now, I do say our contractor waits till the last possible moment of that week to do Wolfville. He's done that for us the last 2 or 3 years. So it's probably going to be on the Thursday or Friday of that week. I can't guarantee it though. Right?
Other questions, comments? I'm glad you're talking to landlords. I was going to suggest that we meet with the landlords. I think the issues maybe that while students might leave in the middle of April, often what is going out is what landlords are putting out, and landlords can't get in until the 1st of May if they
Right.
have a lease that goes till the end of April. So, but if you're talking with landlords, maybe there's some accommodation there. Jody and Aaron and I were just at a town and gown conference, and one of the sessions that I was in, the municipality put large bins, roll-off bins on the streets around the university that last week. And I don't know what the logistics of that are, but that might be something we could look at, and students just put that junk there, and then
Yeah, that,
somebody came and
Yeah.
took it away. But
that would have to be the town of Wolfville would have to make that.
Yeah.
Accommodation, but Valley Waste wouldn't do that for any other part of the region, right?
right, we might talk about that at the IMFA board meeting. So,
Sure.
You know, because I do think, everybody's unique. Kentville, we're accommodating Kentville with their festival. I know that next year, Mother's Day, convocation is always on Mother's Day. I assume it's because we want the town to look nice when we have lots of visitors. So it's on the 12th. There are 2 Fridays in May before the 12th. And so, I feel if there's a will, there's a way, but that's something that we can talk about at the board, and really thrilled that you're talking with the landlords. I think communication is key. Sir Ingham?
Thanks for that. I do agree with you. Talking to the landlords is really, really important. And messaging is really important too, because I see where you're coming from with the bins, but I mean, I don't want people to say, oh, I didn't get my stuff out in time by the end of April, so I'll just put it in the bin, and then we have more of a problem, right? So I think it is really important that we do talk to the landlords. Because I did see people when you came by and picked stuff up and there was still a significant amount of stuff from students or whatever, say, oh, they're going to come by again. So there was even more stuff. So that's still a problem. We're getting more stuff after that, you came by and did the sweep. So I think there's more pieces that we need to sort of figure out as a council in a town. Yeah.
And I guess something that we can also do is so there hasn't been a dump and run since before COVID. I don't know if Acadia is planning to do that, but again, through the town and gown, maybe we can talk about that. Councillor Elliott?
I just had a notion of a banner across Main Street, because we had one for Jesus Christ Superstar. We have one right now for Tidal Bay. It's like cleanup week is, put the date, like everybody's going to be along Main Street at some point. Would that be effective and cheap?
Every little thing helps.
Mhm.
Councillor McKay?
Does your app do push out notifications? So does your app say cleanup week is, did it like?
Yes.
That demographic is more apt to do this than read the
Yes.
banner perhaps?
So we
Use
can
apps.
schedule reminders, but right now they come out on Sunday before,
Yeah,
because that's when we actually need it out. I
gotcha.
think it comes out Saturday night actually, but we can schedule it multiple times.
Like
and-
pushing out reminders. Okay.
And if you're in communication with Aaron, then we can certainly push things out to the ASU and to
Yep.
landlords. I mean, it is about communication.
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Butler?
I was one of those residents. I've lived here for 20 years and I completely missed the date. Not that I didn't prepare. I was away the week before. I had everything sitting in my apartment ready to go. And I thought, it's Friday. That's when my garbage pickup is. They came Thursday.
Right.
So I'm like hauling stuff out. I'm like, where did everything go that was there? Oops. So instead of just taking it and throwing it there or taking it to somebody else's property in Port Williams, I know there are other outlets to get rid of things,
Yes.
either through the Diabetic Society, through the SPCA.
Mhm.
If university students can go to New Minas at 3 o'clock in the morning to get a burger, they can take a bookshelf to the SPCA.
Right.
So are those methods also something that Valley Waste can communicate? Like, if you miss it, here's where those items can go, instead of just sneaking out in the middle of the night and throwing it on your lawn, hoping nobody sees it. Like, it's good stuff. It's good. Most of it is just they have it for a year and they just don't want to take it home with them. So it's stuff that needy families could use, either stuff that could go to the food bank, or if there's are there other outlets that Valley Waste can communicate as well.
No, that's an excellent point. It's something we can definitely include in our education messaging. Valley Village is another one. They take almost everything, really, so.
At that session we went to, Mayor Donovan, they actually did that. They had 2 bins because one was recyclable, and it was like couches, bookshelves, all of that stuff, and it got taken to those types of things. I think that was on the town's dollar perhaps, but I mean, those were really good. They had, the first year was everyone just dumped it in. The second year, they started sorting it and making it, recycling the most appropriate things, and then the rest went to the landfill. But it was a good, they did a good job, or
Maybe
it
a-
seemed like it did.
Maybe budget discussion when we get to that part. Yeah, that's a great idea. All right, thank you so much, Andrew.
Thank you.
And for coming and presenting and for all the ideas this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we have anybody for public input in the gallery. Do we have anybody online? Don't, everybody got all talked out last evening. All right, so I will go quickly. Thank you. Thank you. See you on the street. You know what I mean. Okay. Okay, let me explain. You all know he's my neighbor. Deputy Mayor, could you step in? Okay, you're not helping me, Isabel. Just when I need you, you're in Portugal. Okay, now everyone knows where she is. All right. Committee reports internal. I will ask if anybody has, Councillor Ingham, is there anything you'd like to add to the accessibility report?
No, just as submitted, Barb and I, and a few of the, Barb and I, and a few of the committee members met, I guess it was June 5th. My date's wrong. It's not this past Saturday, the Saturday before, down at the market, to have engagement on the Access by Design version 2, and just get some input. So there were some good takeaways there, and a lot of people did stop by. So I think it was well worth it.
And you have a joint meeting this week?
Yes, we have a joint meeting on Thursday, 4:30, with the WBDC accessibility, and that's via Zoom.
Good, thank you. Deputy Mayor Madeira Voss, is there anything you'd like to add to your planning report? We're good, okay. Councillor Elliott, Source Water. You'd like to add? It's all there. All right, CAO, your report.
Just a few things. So on the staffing front, Garth Regan will be retiring and gave us regretfully his notice as our fire hall caretaker, driver, sort of jack of all trades. So he's going to stay in the position until we have it filled. It is posted right now, so we're hoping that we'll be able to do that in the next couple of weeks. And then Dana Meister, who works in our utility, he's going to be retiring at the end of June. So we do have that position also posted. We're looking for someone that has their certifications to work in our utility, and that closes at the end of the month. Just in follow up to what Andrew talked about at the presentation that he just did, we do have the cost for the town's cleanup that we did do at the end of, I guess, mid-May. So it was just under $3,500 total, all in. About $1,100 of that was labor. If you look at our staff resources that were required for the day, just under $400 in fuel for the day, and then just under $2,000 for the bin rental and the hauling. It's in my CAO report, but just wanted to highlight Fairfield did come in within budget, and with a contingency, we're still about 5% under. So that's great. We don't normally come and tell you that we're under. So hopefully that bodes well for the rest of our tendering that will carry through summer and fall. The fire services piece is moving forward. We've met once with Greenwich in the county, and we're currently working on the terms of reference for the transition coordinator. And it's looking like we'll actually put that out to an RFP process. So we were supposed to meet this past week. That didn't happen. So we're just trying to schedule a date, but that will be moving forward. So that's exciting. Pickleball, we got a little bit derailed with the weather. So we need to line the courts, and it rained. We needed the rain, but rained 8 days straight. So they're working on that this week. And as soon as it gets lined, we'll be able to open those courts. The signage is here. The nets are here. We've done the repair work. So we'll get that out and blast it on social and the website and let you all know when it's ready to open. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is when the WBDC came and did their work plan back in April, they had talked about doing a parklet initiative this year, which is a beautification initiative in front of Shoppers, I believe. I'm looking at Kelton and he can. So they've got some money in the budget set aside. There is an opportunity to apply for a beautification grant to help leverage that dollars. Be still their initiative, but they aren't eligible to apply. So we did apply on their behalf. If we do get it, we will come back to council and let you know, because we would need your approval, but it would be their initiative. We're not anticipating WBDC. We're not anticipating putting any town dollars in. Kelton had asked on my way out to ITGA about the grant because it closed that day. So we're trying to help them out and leverage those dollars. So we'll see if we get those or not, but that's in their work plan and it was presented to council. That's it for me. I think if anyone has any questions, we'll take those.
Questions of the CAO?
Did you want to say where pickleball is?
Okay, so pickleball will be where we had originally anticipated maybe launching it. It'll be at Tower Community Park at the old tennis courts. Well, I say old. They're currently tennis courts, but they're in pretty rough shape. So this will give them a little bit of a new lift for the summer. I think it'll be a really good opportunity for us to see how they work out at that site, given that that was our original proposal to council. And you'll be able to play pickleball or tennis there this summer. So. Great.
I just have a kind of questiony comment about the Special Olympics. I think the last time it was here was my literally first year on council. And David Mangle, Councillor Mangle, and Hugh and I attended. It was lovely opening ceremonies. I don't know if I can't remember, it was so far back, but I think we got an invite. I know that Hugh attended on behalf of Jeff, or David on behalf of Jeff. So can we follow up and see, because members of council might want to be in the audience for that, but it was a special moment. Councillor Palmer?
Yeah, just circle back to pickleball for a second. We were going to share that with as tennis courts. Do you have hours set up and how we're going to be, what's going to be what and when, and how that's going to be divvied up?
No, it's pretty much on an honor system, first come, first serve, but maybe I'll get Kelton if you want to just elaborate. Oh, look at that, first come, first serve. Yeah. That was in.
Yeah, the courts aren't scheduled. We do have a better tennis system and court set up in Rotary Park, so that's probably where most of the tennis will happen. There is, as part of the sign, that we're asking folks if people are waiting to limit for 45 minutes for singles and 60 minutes for doubles. And we're not doing any sort of sign up, but we're creating the 4 courts and hopefully using the honor system to ensure that people get access and time to play.
And okay, that's great. And so the tennis courts will be set up all the time, and you're going to be taken up and down the pickleball court. Is that what you'll do?
The idea with the yes, the tennis nets will stay up as set up with the 2 courts, and the 4 pickleball courts that will be built out on each side of the tennis courts. The intention is that we will leave the nets up there. We've asked Acadia Safety and Security if they would be willing to do a lock at night of the courts. And we're hoping that that's going to work. And they're prepared to do that for us.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just to be clear, in case anyone's listening, the tennis courts at Rotary Park will be always tennis courts. That's not affecting them. I could just see someone saying. All right. Any other comments, questions for the CEO, Councillor Ingham?
I just really like this time of year when we get to know everything that's going on in the town in the summertime, because it's just, they're so listed off there. So I think we're all pretty excited about the pooch party. So I wanted to give a shout out to
That's
that.
coming. We haven't done that yet.
What?
Yeah,
I know it's coming this weekend.
no, but it's coming a report.
Oh, I'm just throwing it out there because I think it was in the report, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there's a bigger one.
Okay, well, I can add to that. How about that? But I didn't, yeah, anyway. I was just following my computer and scrolling down, but
Summer programs are coming, but not right now. We have to do parks next.
She did list.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Do we have a date for our street party to our welcome week back? Do we have that date? Because that wasn't in there and I was just curious about it.
looking
Good
at
to plan.
Kelton on that. I know they're planning to do it. I just don't have the date.
I think it fell on the long weekend last year, so it was. was
It's Labor Day Monday again is the date that was determined with the KDO.
And on that, we did suggest that Valley Waste become part of that, and we'll make the connection with Kelton, just do a little bit of promo and education as part of that event.
Like physically on the Monday? It was the weekend or the,
So next, not next now, but there will be a big thing on summer recreation program. So sorry, Councillor Ingham for,
I'm just getting very excited.
I
That's
know, I
all.
just didn't want to
I,
destroy the thunder.
Yes, I was getting very excited.
Getting-
I will comment later. Thank you,
Gonna be
Mayor.
so
Duncan.
exciting. So almost as exciting is the parks plan. Actually, it's very exciting. So Evan, Rob, Barb, Kelton, everybody, come on up. The parks crew.
2 and 2. Oh, yeah. We don't want too much excitement over this.
But clearly this meeting is going off the rails. I know, just sit here.
Clerk be able to help us with slides. Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm just gonna start and make some opening comments and set the stage. So good morning, council. I was fortunate enough to take part in a tree dedication on Saturday in Willow Park. Councillor Ingham was there to say a few words on behalf of the town, and she spoke about the power of recreation. But the reason I mentioned that, she also spoke with passion around the parks and open space plan, and it was great to hear, and I want to thank you for that, Jennifer. As you will see, we are authoring a visionary document for the town and its parks and open spaces. When I get asked, and I get asked often, how my plan is going, I quickly suggest this is not my plan, but yours and all members of the Wolfville community. As you will see, we have a great group of staff working on this to make sure we get it right. Nick and Trevor started off with our student project in the West End. Barb and Lindsay have been involved in the engagement from day one. Devin is standing by as planner, observer, and mentor for me, and our award-winning consultant have all invested time and energy up to today's date. But we are not there yet, and we will continue to listen and respect all members of the community and what they have to say in relation to our parks plan. As authors of the RFP, Council knows how important this work is and why we're going to extraordinary lengths to seek feedback and create a planning document to guide us moving forward. Be proud of your community. They love their parks and open spaces. As we listen to this update, think about the question, and we will return to that at the end. And the question is this meeting your expectations? So Barb.
Thank you, Director, and good morning. Now it's on. Good morning again. I'm not the greatest at technology. That's why I love green spaces. Okay, so here we go. We are going to give you a little bit of a high level update. Members of council, you have this full report in front of you. This is really meant to engage with our viewer at home, maybe two viewers at home. And hopefully if people are interested in where we're at to this point in time, they can find these reports in the background agenda, which is available on wolfville.ca. So here we go. Now I'm on to my slide. So we started an engagement process, and I've had the pleasure of working with all members of our team on this and members of council, of course. Thank you. That made this a little bit of a unique situation. And I've been working very closely with Lindsay, who's our community planner, to make this a really enjoyable process. So this has been an engagement cycle, and engagement is exciting because it allows us to not only have conversations with members of our community, it allows us to kind of pull those narrative threads, go deeper past kind of preliminary questions. And it also allows us to flow information out. So anytime we were collecting information, we had a chance to explain to stakeholders in the community why we were doing this process, which is to really ensure that we have a good plan in place for the future to ensure that we have the correct assets in the correct environment, and to also ensure that we have a way to keep this financially sustainable today and well into the future. So when we go out and have these conversations and invite people in to have these conversations, it gives us really meaningful data, but it also starts to create support for the final report. And we were hearing that often when we were having conversations. I remember being in the West End with some of the community development students, and folks who showed up with their families were so eager to give us feedback and say, how are you going to use this? And that's really the sign of an engaged community. So primarily through the RFP process, we were tasked with developing and delivering a stakeholder needs assessment. And we tend to use the term stakeholder as opposed to residents, at least I do, because what we found time and time again is that Wolfville parks and open spaces are not just for residents. We gratefully share these with our neighbors, with visitors, and anybody who takes an interest, and usually a lot of dogs. So during this process, we did an awful lot of listening. We did in-person engagement. And again, members of council did a phenomenal job going out and having those conversations, using that workbook as a tool. We also offered virtual engagement. So that nice opportunity to welcome people into Wolfville Blooms and to get them to, in the comfort of their own homes, or sometimes in the park spaces themselves, provide us with that important information. So we were able to also draw from a general stakeholder population through events that we held at the Wolfville Market. Mayor Donovan was there. Lindsay was there with us, chatting with whomever showed up. A lot of you have had just general conversations, not specifically targeted. And in general, sometimes people who ended up on Wolfville Blooms were there because they were checking out another project, and then they kind of got bumped over into that area. We also used a very targeted and intentional approach. And for that, we had amazing conversations with the folks next door at L'Arche. That was one of my favorite sessions. I know Lindsay and Kelton joined me for that. It was great. We got some really good, honest feedback. And then we also did some in-person engagement in our parks, our future park spaces, with the support of the community development students. Some of you were there for the presentation of that work. They also did that at the Wolfville Public School. We had a great opportunity with Rob from Fathom Studios, who joined us for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And tonight we're looking forward to doing a little bit of engagement with the WBDC membership at their party. And I'm looking forward to that because that includes food. So the targeted approach was really important. Through our, and I should also say, the targeted approach also allowed us to pull people into the technology. Any of you who have been out in our parks and open spaces have seen those signs talking about the planning process with that QR code. And when you scan that with your phone, it took you right to Wolfville Blooms. And sometimes that's the best way to get feedback from people. They're in the park. What do you think? Answer these questions. So that was a really cool opportunity for us to connect people who were relevant users of the space while they were still in the space. During the kind of answering of questions through Wolfville Blooms, we also did a little bit of demographic work, and we did ask people to identify and tell us a little bit about themselves. And this did actually clarify for us that we were reaching out to some historically underrepresented communities. I say with full humility, we can always do better in that regard, but we did get some good responses and we're definitely moving in a positive direction. So the numbers, and this is a photo from the engagement session we did on the Saturday over in the West End with the community development students from Acadia. And I will say we had so much great feedback from the kiddos. It was an amazing opportunity. And I think we have a lot of future engagement folks coming out of that neighborhood and soccer players. So for the numbers of folks that we engaged with, we had 174 folks that we did actual face-to-face work with. This is also incredibly exciting when you think about where we were over the past couple of years, right? Things have really shifted. We're moving out of a pandemic. Now we can talk to people, see facial expressions without masks, and really get some good data. On Wolfville Blooms, we had 1,000 visits. So that means people went to the project area for the parks and open spaces master planning process. And of those 1,000, more than 300 took the time to fill out a very detailed survey. And that continues to remain open. I get pings every day. More responses are coming from that. Then we had 146 folks who were engaged with, and that was again through the work that Acadia did. So overall, to this point in time, we are over 600 folks that we have engaged with. That's pretty solid, and we're getting some great data from that. So the quick overview, and I think a lot of this will not come as a surprise because you all know your parks very well, you know your community very well, but it's still important to go out and really get a sense of how people are using these spaces. So the high level information is that Reservoir Park is our favorite park, and it's also the one that people report using the most. This is important to know because if we're thinking about putting more infrastructure somewhere, maybe it's not in the busiest location. People want pickleball. Pickleball was part of every single conversation I think we've had over the past number of months. The nice news is, and we were hoping that we would have had the big announcement today, but even before this process is over, obviously council has been listening, staff has been working, and we're doing our very best to get those temporary courts that we're sharing with Acadia up and running by next week. Primarily, people report using our parks for walking, hiking, and mobility. And the main way that people get to our park spaces is by walking. Again, something to think about as we continue to expand our AT infrastructure. So overall, this process really did help us understand that there's a passion for parks and green spaces. This is a culturally significant part of Wolfville. This is where our communities thrive, and this is where we build community hubs. We got a lot of positive feedback about our parks and our trails and how they're currently being maintained. And those comments were always really nice to read and to hear. And basically, parks and trails define us here in Wolfville. So all of that, and we still have a lot of next steps. We're not done yet. So some of the next steps are outlined. And again, this is going back to Kelton's question that he asked at the beginning of the presentation. Are we meeting your expectations? Are we giving you enough? And are we giving Rob and his team enough to work with? So we're going to continue to gather feedback through Blooms. Those signs are going to stay up in those parks for a little bit longer. We've got some more stakeholder meetings to come. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that the community oven was also completed. We will be having a meeting with Acadia University. Wolfville School was done to a certain extent. We're looking at going back and going a little bit deeper. We will be speaking with the members of the WBDC this evening, and there might be other groups that you want us to connect with to get this information back from. We will be doing more of these pop-up on-site consultations, similar to what the students from Acadia showed us so professionally how to do. We will be doing those go forward over the next couple of months and into September. We will be doing that at Waterfront Park, Reservoir Park, and potentially there are others that you might want to identify for us. So we will be doing another council check-in in early October. We will update what we've been hearing for you, and then we'll be taking direction at that time on some key issues. A draft report will come forward. I'm really hoping I don't have to write that one. I'm going to look at Devin because he writes the best long reports. So we'll leave that to him. You're welcome. And then we're also going to be taking some of these draft reports back. When we do some of these engagement processes, I like to take the information back and do a validation cycle. So we want to definitely take this back and say, this is what we heard. How does that sit with you? So we'll be visiting some folks with that. So Planning Advisory Committee, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and again, Council as well. We then want to have some open house events where we once again kind of go back and say, this is what we heard from folks. How does that sit? Are we going in the right direction? How is this going to work for us once we build our plan? And then we will have the final master planning document, and that will come to Committee of the Whole and to Council. And then we will build and thrive and grow and enjoy our green spaces well into the future. There we go. Sure. Yes. Thank you. So now we're going to switch off with Rob and Devin. I'm not asking you to choose favorites, but
I can't possibly match that level of energy. This will be far more dry. This is the planning policy piece is very exciting, right? So Rob, just to introduce Rob, everyone knows Rob LeBlanc in Fathom Studios, of course. Our family now.
Yeah. So we're just gonna pick up on covering some pieces of the report, and I wanted to take this opportunity to potentially have a little bit of discussion on some specific aspects. For some of this where we've asked for feedback in the report, like other pieces that we kind of bring to you multiple times, obviously reaching out to us and providing that feedback if it's not coming to you right today is also helpful. This is going to take a number of months as we get into actually writing the report and working on the outputs. So yeah, just some of the ongoing work that we covered within the report, the engagement, obviously, but we're also working with Trevor and Nick on trying to develop some more detailed neighborhood profiles off the census data. We are looking at a number of other types of mapping that we'll bring to you around really focusing on, do we have enough supply and what types of supply do we have? We're going to get into a little bit today about parks classifications. Just we did update that in 2020, but we want to check in today on that. The connectivity and access is also related to our active transportation work that hopefully we can have multiple discussions on in the next few months. And it's very related to this work. The policy check-in is happening on the next few slides, and we've been doing research and best practices mostly at Rob's shop. But all of this is to say that this is kind of leading into the outputs that we're going to get into today. So having all of our parks in a general fashion shown sort of what the vision is, what types of things are envisioned there, and some of the amenities that people can expect in the future. So yeah, I don't have all the policies listed on the slide. I thought that would be really boring for everyone to go through. So it's in the report. I know. So I just thought I'd put up a picture here and just remind everyone. So in our municipal planning strategy, we do have a relatively new piece of parks policy that was worked on through, I want to say 2018, 19. And it covers a lot of different areas. So there's general, I don't want to sound like they're bad, but they're kind of motherhood policies around our aspirations around park space. So those are the general policies.
There's enabling policies from a land use perspective. So the municipal plan sort of downloads the implementation into the land use bylaw and enables certain things to happen in our park space. An important section that we're actually using now in the East End, which was updated in 2020, is around parkland dedication. So when there's subdivision happening, what percentage of land and under what terms we take on that land, what level of improvement are we expecting? So even between the West End and what we're dealing with in the East End, we have a different policy framework. So it's been interesting for staff. This is our first time working with that on any type of scale. The classifications we'd like to get some comment on today, and I did get Trevor to map those out. We hadn't really had those mapped out before. And then we have policy around active transportation and the open spaces at Acadia, so at the university. So there's quite a bit there. I think there's 4 or 5 pages of a table listing all the policies. We did put a few comments in, obviously welcoming comments today, but this is an ongoing piece of work. So if there's more detailed pieces that you want to send to us, obviously welcome those. I did just want to touch on these classifications because as we've got into this, we realized that there may be space for another classification or multiple, or perhaps some of the language that we're using here isn't exactly what we should be using. So we're really welcoming comment on this, particularly as you talk to people in the community and sort of how people are, what words people are using to describe the parks. I think using some plain language is really helpful. And Barb mentioned in her piece, we have a lot of people coming into town, visitors, tourists, others that are using our spaces, particularly when we have space that's not even in the town, that's included in our parks inventory. So there's probably a piece here for a regional type of park with things like bathrooms and parking and that type of amenity that would really be required. We don't really have that defined in here, but it can help us and help set expectations more than anything as to how improvements are going in these places. So I'm just pointing at these things. I don't want to sort of read through tables at this meeting, but this is the kind of thing that we're looking at for feedback on at this point. We did provide a map, and if for whatever reason that you're having trouble seeing this, I could send you another version of this or print off a version of this, but this is our current classification system put in a map. So you can see the different types of park space that we currently have and how we are looking to classify them now. And what we're asking is, should we change this? Is there some direction that you want to provide around the way that we're talking about these park spaces? At a zoning level, we'd really just classify all the parks between P1, and that's just basically town park space, and P2, which is the university park space. So this is sort of a sub layer of that, if you need to think about it like that. Rob's going to take you through sort of where the intersection of this stuff is with what they're doing. So I'll get this up for you, Rob, and is this going to work? Yes.
All right, thanks, Devin, and thanks the rest of the team. It's great to be back, and I'm just going to take the next 5 minutes and kind of walk you through where we're at currently, where we're going over the next little bit, and the avenues that council and anybody watching online would have for additional feedback. But just generally speaking, you've seen this timeline for a little bit now. We've kind of made it through the startup phases where we've done some background mapping. We've got some demographic information that we're assembling. We're starting to look at best practices. We're kind of midway through the public consultation phase, and we expect to be doing that throughout the rest of the summer. But at the same time, the consultation is ongoing. We're now moving into best practice research. And so we're looking at kind of parkland standards Ontario has some interesting stuff. BC has some interesting stuff. I'll be interested to chat with Mayor Donovan, her background on this, about additional standards that we could look at and best practices. At the same time, Stats Canada has interesting figures on participation rates and various sport and park related items that we can translate into what would be good for the best park system here in Wolfville. So that work is just starting to begin, and as we move into kind of the engagement phase here, this is one of the sessions that we held last week with the community oven group, and we had three tables of about 8 people each, so a little over 20 people show up to this event, and it was primarily to look at the space around the community oven. And we had 3 questions, which are kind of hidden off to, I'll just move this window. We asked people about the future users of the space, tell us a bit about them and what their needs would be. We asked a question about the potential future programming of these spaces. So what types of activities could go here? And then lastly, we had a question on where these activities might best be located around the site. And, in typical workshop fashion, we had the 3 tables working independently, and then they all came together to share their ideas with the group and kind of give us feedback on what everybody thought were really good ideas. And what's interesting in sessions like this is not just the programming piece, but what I find really interesting is the cultural overlay. So the community knows about the stories that happened in these spaces. And if we can translate those stories into physical spaces or into ways using open spaces storytelling, I find is really interesting. So some of those stories came out in this session. And, this is kind of culminates into a plan. This plan would see generally the relocation of around 25, 30 parking spaces, just a little bit to the north, just a little bit off the page. And so we think there's an opportunity to actually pick up a little bit more parking, but more importantly, to take that paved asphalt space, kind of the urban heat island thing, and reclaim that as green space. And so, there was discussions amongst the groups about natural playgrounds and the potential for sensory gardens, all these activities that you might think would be good neighbor with the community oven. So obviously more sitting space, place to eat, performance areas, making sure there was power for larger performances, hammocks, Wi-Fi, berms like the dikes to tell the Dykeland story. So all really interesting ideas, and as well looking at the library and what the future of that might be, how that could play into the parks plan as well. But there was practical discussions as well about kind of deliveries to the NSLC with large trucks. So making sure that the trucks can navigate back into these spaces and still get out with the loss of a future driveway. So all kind of really interesting ideas. Lastly, the important piece of connecting this new parking lot back to the downtown. In some places that may be a little bit further from the downtown, but only by a half block. In some cases, it may actually be closer to where people are getting out of their cars and moving to. And what's been interesting as well is that Devin and I have been working with Acadia, with the market in preparing drawings that would see the future parkland expansion around the market, AT connections through it, the future of the trail system, and road and intersection improvements. All that stuff is starting to give us a much better picture on the items that we need to consider for the parks plan. as well, just to kind of look at where we're at in the process. So we've gone through this background information stage. We're doing, staff actually here is doing a little bit more thematic mapping on the dissemination areas and getting to get a better picture on the actual communities and what their needs are in the town. Again, going through this engagement, we're just beginning the analysis. So we're looking at really trying to get a better handle on the level of service, the distribution of parks, the types of activities, how well that those activities will service the community. And we're ultimately kind of gearing towards existing and future programming. So that next phase that will happen in September is going to be a really important one. It's where we take all this information through the funnel and we try and get a better picture on what the programming. Have we got all of the parks in the right places? Do we need additional parks? Are there parks that aren't well used and may not be great as park spaces? Do we look at things like playgrounds and pickleball courts? We already know that some of these issues we have to accommodate, but where do we best accommodate them? Do we group them together in one larger area, or do we distribute them amongst the parks throughout the town? So once we have a handle on this programming phase, we'll be creating a matrix to look at each park individually to try and see where the gaps are. Spatially, we'll be looking for gaps in the system, and then we're going to move into individual conceptual park designs. We'll be preparing cost estimates and phasing plans for each of those, and we've got an iterative step where we kind of go through that loop at least once to get each park right, and then ultimately coming back to the phasing plan, the costing. We know that this is probably going to be a substantial cost. How do we implement that over time? We'll be looking at the management plan and then any updates to policy that may be needed. So that's all summarized here. That's kind of the work in progress that I spoke about. I won't dwell on this page. But our next phase in September is the detail of parks programming. That's where we lay out all of the puzzle pieces, and before we start drawing, we start to get a better understanding on where these activities should go. We know our strengths in the town, and we're getting a much better handle on our weaknesses, and we'll be hearing back from the community about what things the community thinks are missing in Wolfville. And as we move out of the programming phase and into the conceptual design, this is again a very early example of how we take that information. So the Acadia students gave us some great feedback when they did their West End Park session. We heard, and as you drive through the community, you notice how many basketball nets sit on the side of the road. So we've heard there's a need for basketball court in this area. There's potential for pickleball. There were some other ideas like zip lines. There's the practicality of some of these ideas, of course, and the cost of maintaining things that we'll have to weigh. And so even at this phase, we're going to have to go through a filtering. Okay, well, what might this cost, and how would it impact other areas that might need services as well? But just as an initial example, this is a very quick idea of how we would go through getting those ideas down on paper, how they might locate on a site, the idea of an outer trail system. So we have a walking system, and then the distribution of elements and making sure that we have a good open space to throw a Frisbee or to hold a community event. At this point, we go through a Class B costing where we take this initial plan and say, here's how much it costs. Everybody will be shocked at how expensive things are. We all know that going into it. And so this will be vetted, it will be phased, it will be costed, and then we'll come back You guys have already seen this. This is an example of kind of what we expect the finished version to be for Basin Drive Park. It's taking all of those ideas. We'll have a final concept plan just so that we know going into the future what the aspirations are for these individual parks. We'll have a cost estimate. I'll move this little window over. The cost estimate will be phased so that we know that, you know, in a window of the first 5 years, you might expect this element to be built. The other elements might be longer term additions. And then we'll have some maintenance recommendations as well. Lastly, we'll have that implementation chapter where we take all this information and talk about management and policy and costing and phasing. So I think that's it. I think we're just going to open it up and have any questions that you guys might have or directions that you might want to point us in as we move forward.
Councillor Ingham.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that this information report, you guys just hit it out of the park, and that was intended. That pun was intended. So thank you so much for all that information. This is one of the most fun things I've had the privilege of being on council so far, just talking to everybody, because people are pretty happy, and to bring people into this process is really, really important. I did have a couple of questions. I think the first one maybe to Barb. And when you're talking about the dissemination areas, like how did you get all that data for basically the single incomes and all that? Where did that come from? Was that a question on the website?
So I think what you're asking about is actually a question for Nick.
Okay,
So I'm going to pass this
Okay.
to Nick.
it was specific, that's all, more specific.
It comes from the census data.
Okay,
So yeah, they can break it down into smaller areas of Wolfville.
okay. Okay, and did we want to get into, like, Devin, did you want to get into like questions about the park classification, or would that be later?
I would welcome the feedback anytime. So whether it's now or you want to send me your
Yeah.
notes, that's
I can.
really up to you.
Ask a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, so when I'm looking at it and I see the classifications, community parks, neighborhood parks, I think maybe it would be helpful beside each one of those if we had an example of what parks are already like that, just so people have an idea. I don't see the examples next to it. And would we be looking at trying to get so many parks in each sort of classification, as we're having 22 parks and open spaces? Is it something that we should say we needed to have this many community parks, this many neighborhood parks? Is that something that we need to look at?
You'll see in some of the policy pieces that back in 2019, we were talking about having a community park within a certain distance in the West End. That at the time, that was really the push for the West End Park. And then there's a sort of an aspirational policy at the time, because we didn't know what was going to happen in the East End, about a similar park in the East. And so, but that was sort of the level of the MPS of the day. And so I would like to take this opportunity to either, if we're actually moving forward and implementing those policies should be updated accordingly or not. But as we see this picture develop, I think, yeah, talking about what types of parks and where and what type of level of service we're striving for is really important through this.
Very good. Yeah. Councillor Palmer.
I guess this goes back to a comment that Barb made, and you said that there are people who are underrepresented. Do we know who they are, and do we know how to get to them?
Thank you for that question. So we did not ask for specific names for people who were self-identifying as a member of the LGBT community, or somebody who would be identifying as a member of the BIPOC community, or somebody living with a disability perhaps. But we did actually invite people to, in a secondary part of the survey process, invite people to leave names if they wanted to have further conversations. So do we know how to get in touch with people specifically? We are doing that because they are reaching out through our virtual platform, and we're seeing that happen in all of our kind of outreach to the community. And then if we want to have some more targeted conversations, we can do so in the same way that we did with L'Arche. We would look for somebody who we might identify as a community influencer and ask them to invite us into an environment where we can all sit down and have those conversations. The community oven has also done a great job at providing those connections for us as well.
Thank you. I think that's important to make sure we include those people or that group or whatever that group is, because we're trying to be all encompassing for everybody. So it's really important.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of information to sort of go through for sure. And definitely exciting, as Councilor Ingham said. So for me, I'm looking at it and as a bigger picture, because the parks are one thing, and I look at these classifications and they all look reasonable. However, I mean, it doesn't say washrooms, it doesn't include all of those other things in them. So what ones would have those things? Where would they be? So when we started this, I envisioned in my head that every community, I don't know if it's measured in distance or not, because maybe that's not possible, like 500 meters, like a parking, that may not be possible throughout town as people build houses and up. But you look at the west, the center, and the east and say, does everybody have a community park, a neighborhood park, or whatever the titles might be? Do they have washrooms? Do they have access to, the same amenities sort of on each side, or what's in the middle? Because I see, if you look at sports fields or community programming, so those right now are in our core at Rotary and Willow Park. And then do we have transportation? Do we have parking? All of those things that go to them, because I think if you're going to build pickleball courts, they're noisy. You probably don't want them in your backyard, and you need people from everywhere are going to come to them. So you need access, either biking, walking, or parking, or whatever that might be. So I think this is a good starting point, but I think it almost needs, that map was really hard to read, just the one that said community parks and all the colors. It was really hard to see what those were. But I think if we get that blown up and then make sure it was equitably divided between all the spaces in town, I think would be helpful. And then, yes, please.
So that was just existing, but we are working on a whole bunch of thematic mapping that will outline what you're talking about. So, is there equitable access to playgrounds, fields, all of that? That's coming in our next sort of draft report stage.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Like, I think this is a really good jumping point, but all of those things all need to come out. And then when you build a park or change the classification, will we list out what are the unintended consequences? Because when you put something somewhere, you're going to possibly lose something, or it will cause pressures in other ways. So will we be evaluating that as well? Does that make sense? So I looked at the one where you looked at down by the library. If you take all that and make it all green space, we just come off our public hearing last night that said, oh, if you put more traffic downtown and we take away all the parking, we're in trouble. So from their viewpoint, that was not maybe the best. So there will be unintended or maybe intended consequences to each one. Will we be saying what those are? And then, because we may need to find other answers to the problems we create. Does that make
I think
sense?
that'll be really key part of the sort of key issues direction for council, because there's going to be a fairly substantial list of those, I would think, that everyone, like, we try to bring this to you and bring everyone along with it, so that before we present a draft report to the community, you don't sort of get that, well, this is going to happen. And I think inevitably there's going to be some of that, but if we can work through it in the next update, I think that would be super helpful.
Yeah, and then how we tie the AT into that, like, it's just right now, all wonderful things, but it's a big picture of development, parks, AT, and it's all going to mix in together. So it is a big picture and puzzle that we need to piece together. Really exciting, but the next steps will, I guess, fluff out some of all of it, suss out some of that stuff.
I'll go to Councillor Elliott, but I just want the deputy mayor to know I'm watching to see if a hand goes up. I haven't seen it yet, but it's a very tiny little square, so others can help me keep an eye on that. My site, Councillor Elliott.
Okay, I agree with Councillor McKay. This is a very rich smorgasbord of possibilities and it's very exciting to read and try and figure out what people would like the most first. And yeah, it's great. It's great. And thank you for all the work. Thank you. The one thing that stood out or surprised me that I would like to mention is under the classifications, the old burying ground. I do not see that as a park. There are people who would say it's a holy space. And opening up the back wall or the back gate is something, as Kelton knows, we looked at before. And Dr. Jonathan Fowler from St. Mary's brought students up, and there are people buried, even though there's no tombstones, there are people buried there. So I think that is a prompt for a bit of a robust conversation, because that place does bring pilgrims, maybe not that many, but because the Horton Carver stones are there, there's a number of things that bring people, and it is a provincial heritage designated spot of land. Yes, it's a green space, and sure, go in and use it and walk around. I saw a class happening there last fall under one of the big trees, and it is usable, but I just would question that. Thank you.
Councillor Butler?
Just two quick things. First, it's a great plan. I have a lot of fun reading about this stuff. I think it's wonderful. The two things I had were from the next steps portion. I just wondered how Acadia was being asked, engaged, involved. It was being broken up into separate groups of faculty, students, specifically like environmental students, or community, like you did community engagement as one thing, but like through different departments in the university, if that was going to be broken down. It just says Acadia University. I just didn't know how that was going to be. I heard the word cost a lot, but only the planning advisory committee, the accessibility committee are given draft reports. So will anything come to the audit committee? I was feeling left out. In terms of costing or any amounts, maybe not at the beginning stages, but towards the end, I just want it to be included.
I can jump in with a response on next steps of engagement specifically with Acadia. So we do know through Blooms that we've had student feedback. That's an important kind of portion of our community that we need to connect to. I think primarily at that high level conversation with folks from Acadia, and we would be looking more so from the operations side of things, the athletic side of things. We want to ensure that we know what their plans are go forward, so that we're not duplicating, and so that we can really identify ways to partner similar to what we've done with pickleball during this kind of temporary trial zone. And then as far as the kind of report back, we love talking about this stuff. So if audit would like to invite us, I'm sure we'd be happy to go. I will just note from the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the commitment to involve them in the process was something that was highlighted in Access by Design Volume 1 and continued to be reinforced as part of our accessibility plan in the second version. So that is part of specifically why we are giving that committee such an amount of exposure to this, and that was previously committed, but happy to talk to anyone about this.
I think Councillor Ingham and then Councillor McKay.
Thanks for that, Barb. I do like the way everything is tying in together. Accessibility, we have the climate and the environment, active transportation, but I do want to build on what Councillor McKay said. That I guess maybe wasn't forefront in my mind on the parks plan, but it's forefront in my mind being a counselor, and that is how the active transportation and the traffic issues we've just talking about our secondary plan in the East End. Many questions have come up about the traffic. So I'm going to just say, if you build it, they will come. That means more traffic. So we also have people perhaps coming on bikes. Do we need more education along the Harvest Moon Trail, which we have the busiest section of anywhere along the Harvest Moon Trail? I've heard complaints about, we've put up stop signs to go through and people aren't stopping. So we have the safety issue on that. So there's some pieces of safety that I'm concerned about, but I guess when Jody mentioned, people are going to come, to this area, we want visitors to come. And even people from the West End, that's why we're trying to make these the parks more equitable, to say they're not all in the West End, they're not all in the East End, they're not all in the core. We need to have something for everybody. That being said, people are going to be driving their cars there. We'll have more issue with parking, we'll have more issues. So it comes back to what can we do on the traffic side of it. And I'm going to throw it out there. I've asked before, when can we see as a council that we perhaps can do something on Main Street to have like a trial period or something? So yeah, so that's my question.
I don't know if, are you asking when about a trial period for the lights or?
I guess everything's sort of coming together, which is really good. I like this parks plan or the East End secondary plan, all that stuff. I can see how everything is coming together. I don't see how the piece of traffic is coming together. So I need help with that. I don't know if I'll throw it out to anybody else because it's going to be, and I know it's piece by piece. Obviously, this parks plan is over 10 years. It's not going to happen overnight. I get that. But we're going to be doing something, and to some areas that didn't have traffic before that may have more traffic. That's my concern.
I know, like the light specifically, I know there's something in the budget to look at that this year, next year. I
think operationally, Alex, I was going to start to look at it. Operationally, start this year into next year, but I couldn't give you the specifics on what that entailed, but it's in the ops plan.
I think the question, like the mayor and I had a conversation yesterday about, it is a communications challenge when people haven't been part of these discussions, and there's a lot of moving pieces related to traffic, related to infrastructure more broadly in our capital budget. I mean, I don't think people are poring over our budget and looking at all the line items over multiple years. But it's bringing that back in the East End. We saw it last night. There was a big gap in sort of information on what's coming and what's planned and what's been thought about, and that includes transit as well, and some of the pieces there, and AT, traffic, parking. I mean, these are all the visceral issues that everyone wants to talk about. So yeah, I think the parks plan is a great opportunity to tie some of it together. I think through the communications on the East End, hopefully we can do a better job. It's certainly something that after last night, I was thinking quite a bit about, and I think our staff team needs to do a better job of that, because I do think there can be some simpler messaging that goes out that can tie some of this together, so that, yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing is, that type of issue is just really being left as sort of an albatross or a red herring, sort of like, oh my goodness, this all sounds good, except. So yeah, trying to address that is a challenge that we're aware of. I don't have a solution today, but something we need to bring forward.
We need a report about everything.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
that's only like 2-3 pages.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, 4. Councillor McKay.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to bounce off what Councilor Butler said. I think all committees should actually see this, like WBDC, police should be looking at the safety of our parks. I think all of those committees that are all in-house to us are really important to give feedback, because, and it does engage then another level of people, which I think is important. And they'll be looking at it from every different angle. So I think that's a good point. So I think if it could come to all of our internal ones. Maybe I didn't, or maybe we didn't talk about it. And even like our arts and culture. So there's things on our docket today for an art installation. So how do those things fit in the culture, and making sure, we don't build a tree in front of it, or put a tree in front of it, because that would deter from the beauty of it. So putting those things in too. And just when we went to Town and Gown, I noticed a lot of communities we talked a lot about door knocking, and it sticks with me that we don't do a ton of door knocking. They seem to do it twice a year, But I thought this would be a really fun one to do door knocking with, instead of like going with something that's not, maybe not as fun. Like stop
They did
throwing parties.
Tabling too. I'd never heard that. What we call pop-ups.
Oh,
they called
yes,
it tabling.
tabling. Yeah.
It's a new word.
But I thought like if we went out, like a council and some staff and we all went out, it would be kind of fun and over the next bit. And either brought the flyers or whatever information to them and then they could ask us questions, but went to different sections. I thought that would be a different level of engagement. And we might hit some of those people that maybe we didn't get, you know, or didn't know, or, you know, a population that is harder to bring out. If we went to them, maybe it's a little bit easier, but I thought it would be a fun topic to talk about if we went from door to door. I think it'll be fun.
See any other lights before I make my comments? Deputy Mayor, would you like to weigh in on anything? You have your,
Can you hear me?
I can, but now we can't see you.
Unfortunately, I had to switch to my iPhone
Oh.
today because my laptop wasn't charged. So no, I just wanted to say how impressed I actually was with this really interim report. It's very, very thorough, and I thought the information was very clearly presented. But I agree with the comments of how we need to knit everything together of all our other plans. I was actually thinking as I'm listening to this that, you know, the first workshop we had as a council where we were presented with the booklets and, you know, there are members of the public that were allowed to attend. I was thinking whether another similar workshop where we could look at this information to date before the next report is presented might not be a good idea. I don't know if we could fit it in or if that's sort of outside of the plan. But this is such a rich project and report. And I personally would really appreciate the time to sort of sit collectively and go through it in a bit more detail
Thank you.
together.
Now we see you.
Okay, can you hear me? No.
We can hear you and we can see you.
Oh, you can do both right now.
Can.
I thought I had muted myself. Oh, well, anyway.
All right. I have so many comments. I'm going to write them and send them to you. All policy things. But I will make 3. I really like this idea, both with respect to the discussion last night and to the discussion today. And maybe along the lines of what the deputy mayor has said and Councillor Butler, I think there would be a great benefit, perhaps in September, of having a community meeting where we invite all of our committees, but also open to the public. I don't think it would happen in this room based on how squished we were last night. Maybe at the Whittle or something where we kind of give the community, I'm looking at Barb, like a context for everything we're doing. We're working on sewer expansion, another well. We're dealing with water, the fact that our wells are gravity fed, and if you live at the top of the hill, it's not going to go fast, but if you live down where I do, it comes real fast. There's so many things, so many great things we're doing for the town, including, and this parks plan. I'm just going to throw that out there and think maybe as council and with senior staff, we might think about something where we can say, this is all the stuff that we're doing, maybe before we get into budget. So that's a little bit of an aside, but I think we're hearing threads of that in all of your conversations today. 2 comments I'll make, and I will leave the rest for an email that I copy all of council, but I'll send to Rob and to staff. I think it's important for the consultants to look at future trends, and I'll give you 2 examples. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a reunion and somebody there, one of the activities was pickleball that was kind of introduced. I'd never heard of it. This was these were people at the reunion who went to Florida. I guess it was a big thing in Florida, never heard about it before. And then suddenly it is exploded. I didn't give it any thought after that time I played it because I thought it was, well, regional thing. Way back in the 90s, early 90s, when I was doing parks planning, our consultant, who I will not say who that was, but our consultant looked at all of, in the city of Burlington, all of the sports activities we had. We had a couple of soccer pitches that were pretty good. And the recommendation was we have enough soccer pitches. Well, within 3 or 5 years from that, soccer exploded and we had nowhere near the amount of soccer. But we had extra ice and we were still building more really good twin and 4-pad ice facilities. So I think, and a lot of our trends do come from the States and from Europe, but so I think it's really important is that the next soccer activity or pickleball activity that is not on our radar, but could be in a few years. So I'm hoping that trends both of things going up and things going down, because I would like to know where we are on that. In the report, it talked about a regional facility, a regional park. And I think that was regional in terms of town, but regional in terms of our region. So outside of Wolfville, I was asked that question. I was asked the question, how many soccer pitches do we have? And I said, well, I know there's some really good ones in Bentville, and I know there's some, I know we have the field at Acadia and Rotary Park. And I know I've driven kids to who, when we had the Syrian families come in, and I know I was driving them to soccer games in Kentville, and we do operate as a region. Our new rec center is regional. So I'm sure Kelton, excuse me, has a good sense of what's regionally. So we know that we don't always do, you can do it in Wolfville, but we don't do everything in Wolfville. And an understanding of that, because you know, I think it's okay if we're driving to New Minas for soccer, but if soccer is something that has huge demand, just to take that as an example, and we're not part of that, I think we need to do that. And as I say, the rest of the comments I have are quite lengthy, so I will send them to you. But yeah, a really good start, I think, and I am more convinced after this discussion and last night's discussion that we need to do something so that the community knows all the things we're doing, and everything is so connected, whether it's AT or regional public transportation or our utilities or our traffic. The life in this town is connected, and it would help our job as counselors making decisions and responding if we could at least say, this is the whole. So I throw that out, but thank you. Before we go on, I know Councillor McKay has a hard 12 deadline. The rest of us don't. Are there any other comments? If not, thank you, everybody. All staff have been working on that and the consultants, and much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
So normally we would take a bit of a break, but I am conscious, I think we can go 20 more minutes without the break. And so Jen, this is the part that you're really excited about, the summer recreation programs and events. Just-
I really don't.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, 5-minute break. Okay. Apparently there's some work being done. You'll be more excited. Yeah, this is not. But bye, Katie. back. Are we unmuted? Welcome back. We have a guest, Summer Recreation Programs and Events 23, and welcome Mudley. It's really nice to see you. Take it away. Whoever's.
Mudley says hi.
There.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. Sorry, overshadowed. Good morning, Mayor Donovan, CAO, members of council. We're here this morning to provide a general overview, broad strokes of the fun stuff we have planned for the summer, for the rest of spring and summer. I have with me Maria Giroux, our summer special programming and events coordinator. Maria's been working closely with our staff to put together programs and events for the summer, so she'll take part in the presentation too. Do I bring this up, Laura? Okay. Okay, thank you. Think I'm going to turn it over to Maria to just introduce the agenda that we have.
All right. Hi, everyone. Like Nick said, I'm Maria, the Special Events and Programming Coordinator for the summer. It's great to see all of you today. So just a quick overview of our agenda, what we're going to be covering today. We're going to be covering firstly the intentional events, which is just the reasoning behind why we do what we do and how like the mindset that we have going into all of our events this summer. Then we're going to talk about the Town of Wolfville events. So the Pooch Party, which I know many of you are super excited for, myself is included. I'm going to talk about Canada Day, Mud Creek Day, and the Tried in Wolfville Summer Series that I am putting together. Then we're going to chat about the community partner events, like Come On Down, the Prom Parade, and the Latin Dance Festival. And then we're going to have a special little challenge call to council at the end regarding the Mud Challenge.
Thanks, Maria. Okay, so just some of the sort of broad reasoning behind why we do events as a town and a municipality. Our events are intended to provide a variety of entertainment and enjoyment opportunities in an inclusive and welcoming atmosphere, while also celebrating local culture, fostering a sense of belonging, and contributing to social cohesion. And of course, some of our events are smaller scale and intended to draw in a more local crowd, and some events are intended to be more regional in their draw and bring in people from outside of Wolfville and even across the province and across Canada sometimes, we hope.
So this year, this year we're going to be hosting our second annual Pooch Party. So hopefully this event will be taking place on June 17th, depending on the weather. It's going to be taking place at the Waterfront Park, and it's catered towards families and people with a love of dogs to come together just to like share in our obsession for dogs, lots of dogs in this town to celebrate. We have a huge agenda of fun things that are going to be going on at the Pooch Party, including lots of contests, best dressed, best trick, best overall dog. We have an awesome photo booth that Nick and I have been very excitedly working hard at to take pictures of people with their dogs. We have a caricature artist who is going to be doing Picasso portraits of people's dogs. We bought 4 kiddie pools that we are going to be filling with. A few of them have water, and of them we're going to make into a ball pit, which I, for one, am very excited about the ball pit. I don't know about you. We have a lovely local vendor who's making a doggy birthday cake for this event. She couldn't be there because she had a prior commitment at the Wolfville Farmers Market. So she's like, you guys can just have my best cake, and she's going to drop it off for us. And she's also making little treat packets. We have an agility course, a dog treat making station, and there's going to be an option for people that are there to donate to the SPCA, to like pets and families impacted by the wildfires. So that'll be at one of the vendors' booths.
And then next up, we have Canada Day celebrations. This is become a tradition in Wolfville. We do, it's a more local event. There are other Canada Day celebrations across the valley and the region, and of course across Canada. So we do, it was really great last year. We had great weather. We had a great turnout, and it starts around 11 a.m. It starts at 11 a.m. Just kind of an opening ceremony and kick off the day. And then we'll have music from Jill Hiscock, and we'll have all the fun things for kids and families, bouncy equipment and face painting and henna tattoos and balloon twisting, a cash barbecue hosted by the Historical Society as usual, and the ever popular giant soap slide, and a dunk tank. Okay. I should have said we are looking for volunteers to go in the dunk tank for sure. Okay. And so then later on in the summer, towards the end of July, Mud Creek Days. This is the annual celebration of what's formerly known as Mud Creek. Of course, Wolfville now. And so this is generally a more regional, it's a bit of a bigger draw. There's activities throughout the weekend, starting on Friday with the kickoff street party. We close down a portion of Main Street and have a big party there with music. The music didn't list it here. That's going to be the Sundries. They've performed there before. They're pretty popular kind of local band. And then a movie night on Friday night as well up at Rotary Park. And that has been, we've bounced back and forth between the Al Whittle and Rotary. There is another show that evening that's just been announced called Jump. It's an 80s musical also going on that evening. So that'll play into the Mud Creek Days itinerary as well. Then on Saturday, Mudley's birthday party at Clock Park. Lots of cake and bouncies and more younger person focus for that. And there's all day that day, there is an art festival, Wolfville artists art show and sale that happens at the East End Gateway. The annual Mud Challenge, we'll talk more in a few minutes about that. And then Saturday evening is a big concert on the waterfront. We have the Hutman Brothers this year, who are great. And then famous Mud Creek Days fireworks on Saturday evening. We have a new event this year on Sunday. It's called the Sparkles. So it's a 2-hour long, I think, very kid-focused musical entertainment and costumes. And I think there's pirates and magicians involved and things like that. So that's a local group of musicians and artists that have got together to form this group and provide something great on Sunday afternoon for Mud Creek Days. And then, yeah.
So I'm just going to be talking about the Tried and Wolfville series with you guys. So this series is introductory one-off events that allow community members to just try something for the first time. So we've already had a couple workshops. We had mountain biking a couple weeks ago, and then the other day we had photography. So those 2 workshops went really well. And the upcoming workshops that we can get excited about are flower pressing. So those ones are going to be super, super fun. I'm going to be leading those ones. We have a series of really cool gardening related events with the Acadia Community Farm. So we're partnering with them to offer, we have 5 confirmed workshops, and they're all related to a different gardening theme in the Acadia Community Farm. So we've got like eating green, so planting a salad garden, tending to a garden. We have farm yoga, and we have a canning vegetables workshop. And then the last one, we're going to be harvesting our food and like eating a meal together. So those are going to be taking place from, I think, this Wednesday, tomorrow until October 4th. We have some events that don't have confirmed dates yet, but they're going to be happening throughout the summer. So herb garden making, lacrosse, outdoor navigation, pollinator homestead making, weightlifting for women, pickleball, and upcycled art.
Okay, and then just to highlight a few of the more community of events that are sort of handled and run by community groups. This one is the Come On Down. Maria is actually going to be helping with this, so I'll let her kind of.
Yeah, so Come On Down is an event that takes place every month until September 21st, hosted by poet Jeremy Lutz. He's a local poet here in town. He got a grant to make this event series happen, and I'm really excited to be working with him closely this summer. So it's a family-friendly open mic night happening in Willow Park that gives people the chance to share whatever comes to their mind. They can sing a song, sing a poem, share a story, do a dance, whatever they want. You get 5 minutes on the mic, and it's just a really supportive and inclusive environment. So yeah, spread the word, bring your friends, come on down, perform a song, do whatever you want. It's going to be great.
And then we have the Horton Prom Parade. So this is the third year for this happening in Wolfville, and it's been it was sort of born out of COVID when we needed to space people out and come up with a different way to celebrate the grads on their way to prom and graduation. And it's turned into just a really nice, welcoming event, and brings in upwards of 1,000 people to town, with between 200 and 300 people graduating. And sometimes they'll bring their dates to the prom and all their siblings and families that come and watch. And so a few photos there of just what it looks like on Main Street. This year, they're going to shorten up the route a little bit and make it just more compacted, so it's a little better for viewing. And they're also going to have, instead of going all the way down to Waterfront Park, the grads, once they get to Central Ave, they'll join the crowd. So the crowd will continue to build as it goes on, and they'll get to watch their classmates walk through as well. So just one small improvement for this year, and look forward to that on June 26th.
So the Latin Dance Festival is going to be happening this year. It's the first time that this festival will be happening in Wolfville. Aurora and her husband Stuart are putting on this festival. They got a CPP grant to initiate the idea. They are going to be having a lot of awesome programming at this event, many options free of charge. And their signature event that they're super, super excited about is they are hoping to create the longest conga line ever in Nova Scotia. It's going to be happening on Main Street. So yeah, they're looking for as many people as possible to join in with this awesome community little dance festival. And yeah, bring your friends.
So we highlight those last three in particular because they were supported this year by our community partnership program grants. So they were supported by the town, and hopefully that funding kind of helps them get these off the ground and helps them continue into future years. So that's kind of exciting. And then so back to the Mud Challenge. And so the Mud Challenge, it originated as a fundraiser for the Mudley Fund, which helps, as hopefully we all know, helps youth in Wolfville who face financial barriers to access recreation programs that they might otherwise not be able to partake in. The Mud Challenge itself is it's mud themed challenges. So anything from relay races to searching around in the mud for objects that we've identified for you to find, or we use the giant soap slide for some of the activities, and it's all fun stuff in the mud. So when it started, we had corporate sponsorship in past years, and that has kind of waned. So we are looking to kind of revamp the challenge, and we've come up with a new way to sort of approach it. And we are looking for 8 team captains who will recruit their Mud Challenge teams and lead a fundraising campaign for the month leading up to the Mud Challenge itself. And so the team captain and their team will have basically 30 days to try to raise at least $200 for the Mudley Fund. And we would also challenge teams to raise more than that. And I believe that Mudley has a set of invitations to deliver.
So I have some great news. The Office of the CAO has agreed to enter a team, so we need 7 more teams. Members of council, this is your challenge. We know you can pass a ball like you pass a motion with teamwork. Social media has prepared you to crawl through the mud, and your seat on council proves that you care about this town and that you have what it takes to win. So you can build a team to help destroy the barriers to recreational activities and win the challenge.
We got a handicap?
So,
Oh, not that.
okay, so this is,
Like a
it's a
few
fun
points?
challenge. So basically the idea is that if you accept the challenge, then you would recruit your team. You don't necessarily yourself have to take part in the challenges. You could recruit 4 people and you could be the captain of your team, or however you want to kind of structure that. You could get 5 or 6 people and they can sub in and out. It's kind of flexible that way. That's the idea that you're being challenged with, is to, oh, well, you could combine and we can look for more teams. We are looking for 8 teams in total. The whole idea of the teams, though, is to try to raise as much money for the Mudley Fund as possible. So if we have more teams and more teams competing to fundraise, the mud challenge is sort of the end of it, where, you know, we have fun and we compete in the mud challenge. But the idea here is to try to build some more awareness around the Mudley Fund and build the fund itself by you could get sponsors for your team from businesses. You could ask individuals on your team to go out and canvass people, or take pledges, or whatever you want to do, be creative with it. But that's kind of the idea that we have. We're hoping that each team that wants to enter would be able to raise at least $200 for the Mudley Fund. That will guarantee your entry. And then if you would like to and are able to raise more, the teams that raise the most money by the mud challenge will get advantages in the challenge itself. So you would get some handicaps or reverse handicaps, and also special prizes for that team that raises the most money. There you have it. You don't have to accept right now.
I'm just saying, it's on. And I want to say, Travis is my neighbor. Oh, you bet. It's on. I'm not competitive about a lot of things, but yes, I am.
So there you have it. That's our overview for the summer. We're happy to take questions or comments if you have them.
I have. Have you seen mine?
The 29th is the mud challenge. Yes.
Council will be canceled for the
And
next
it's-
3 months after that. But
That event is rain or shine, and it's actually more fun in the rain. It makes the mud much more fun to play with.
But you're not gonna go out in the dikes and wallow around in the mud.
We haven't been doing that. No, it's all at Willow Park. So we've
Been a long time since I've done that.
slide down here. Aaron, did you want to kind of control your stuff?
No, I just wanted to ask you mentioned the rain and it tweaked. Is there a rain date for the pooch party? If it.
Yeah,
canceled?
the rain date is the 18th. Literally just the next day. Yeah.
It's also gonna rain.
Is it supposed to rain?
All weekends.
Oh, no.
Councilor Ingham.
Well, thank you. It's finally here. All the fun part. Thanks for everything that you bring to the town, and certainly the rec department has certainly had some great co-op students and students that you've hired. So thanks for your enthusiasm. Just a couple of questions. The first one is I will not be here, unfortunately, for the Mud Creek Days. I'm away that weekend. But I could recruit a team. Is there specific ages at the team? Because I'm thinking in my head of some organizations that I could recruit, involving sporting and everything like that. So, when you're looking to sporting teams, they're always competitive. So is there an age range?
We've made it 16 and over
16 and
for
over.
the mud challenge. And last year we actually introduced just like a fun part before the mud challenge for younger kids to play in the mud. That's all they want to do. So we had a few fun games for younger kids, and then the actual competition would be 16 and up.
16 and up. Okay. And the other question is I never heard of farm yoga. Where would farm yoga be?
It's just regular yoga at the Acadia Community Farms.
Okay. So
Yeah.
there's I've heard of goat yoga before.
It's not
but
goat
there's
yoga, no.
goat yoga.
It's
Okay.
just yoga at the farm.
Okay, thank you.
Our minds did go there. I got cows, that would be heavy. Any other comments? I think council has been lost for the rest of the morning. Thank you so much. It was great. Members of council, we can do this. We can.
Thank you.
I thought we would do it together, but apparently
We'll
not.
say goodbye to Mudley now. He gets hot when he's out of the mud for too long.
Bye, Mudley. Thank you. All right, we are going to take a brief recess for lunch. How, half an hour? You think? No, not half an hour?
No, I was just
Okay.
thinking if we could get.
I'll pass it to the CAO to tell me what to do.
Well, I just have Charles waiting to join the in camera, so the longer we put it off, like I just don't know when I'm gonna, so I was just wondering if maybe we could get through the regular, the rest of it, because the other items shouldn't take too long. And then we
Okay.
can break and grab our lunch and even come in and eat during the in camera, because we won't be broadcasting. We can just kind of,
Okay.
if that works, if just suggesting, otherwise I can check with Charles to see when his hard stop is. Oh, we can take a 5-minute break.
All right, I understand. We're going to continue. And we are going to do, CEO, what are we going to do?
So that we'll do the municipal fees policy, public art, parks plan, and then.
We did the parks plan already. We've done the parks plan and 18. All right, so we're going to do the remaining 3 and then we're going to break and bring our lunches back and we're going to do an in camera. So I guess CAO, will we pass on to you the
Sure, so Mike will
municipal
come
fees?
up and speak to the fee policy.
Just the first one up.
Fees.
Thank you, Laura. Sorry, I bumped the mouse. Fees policy is realistically a couple of months late getting before council. We usually like to try to get this done in March or April. Been a busy season. There's not a lot of changes proposed in the fees policy if you've had a chance to work through the RFD. So for this year, it's largely to make sure items like the NSF charge is consistent with the application just made to the utility and review board around those items, and we've already got those submitted to the province. So the rest of them, we've made a note in the RFD around, there's certain pockets of fees that the department heads and their staff would like to look at further, because sometimes it's easy to say increase a fee. That has repercussions. I think we talked earlier about unintended consequences. So that could be anything like increasing fees around the rec center. Some more thought wants to go into those. There may be recommendations. So we see a more fulsome report coming. Hopefully we'll target more like a January sort of timeframe so that we deal with it ahead of the budget approval. And I think that will improve the whole process on that. So there's a motion in your agenda if you, or I could answer questions either.
Why don't we get the motion on the floor and then if any members of council have questions, so somebody like to move that motion?
Can do that.
Councillor Butler is already competitive.
I move that committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the amended municipal fees policy 140-015 as attached to RFD 0172023.
I guess as head chair of audit, should have done
Exactly.
it. I'm just so excited.
I just
So,
jumped right on.
Seconder, please. Councillor Elliott, are there any questions of Director McLean? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion as read, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, so that one is passed. Fees policy, public art. Who's doing that?
I don't think I'm doing public art.
Kelton? In air conditioning in this today.
Good morning again, or good afternoon. Just a little background, the town has been building a art and public spaces reserve over the last number of years. And we have a small working group together that has put together a package that is really interesting and potentially will add a lot to our downtown core. I think it's included in the RFD, speaks to what the project is, potentially what it will look like in the space, in the green space by the post office. And the question is, although you've approved a spend of $30,000 within your capital approval at the budget this year, when we've costed this out and the number came back, we need to increase that to 35,000 to allow us to build out the installation and also prep the site for this. In consultations with our director of finance, the reserve can support that, so it's not anything that's not available within the public art reserve. So the motion is A, approving the installation as presented, and B, the dollar increase from 30 to 35,000. And I'll leave it at that. Happy to answer any questions. Grateful to the members of the community that have got us this far. And we'll see where it goes.
Okay, we'll get the motion on and then, and Councillor Elliott, would you be prepared to move that motion?
I certainly would. In fact, I'd be pleased to move that the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision, that council approve the installation of an Alex Colville outdoor Wolfville gallery located on the west facing wall of 399 Main Street, and increase the capital budget for this project from the approved $30,000 to a maximum of 35 to be funded from the Public Art Capital Reserve Fund.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Butler, are there any questions or comments for staff? Councillor Elliott and then Councillor.
Me first, okay. Just wanted to explain because some people seem to be misinformed reading this, that there's going to be painting happening. It's actually, to me, it's quite interesting. They're going to be images on signage. So if you think of the Harvest highway sign up on Highway 101, that's the material that will be used. The paintings will be imprinted onto the signage and then covered with a special material to keep them safe from dirt and life. Anyway, I think it really will be a gallery, and that's why the notion is to frame them and then mount them on the wall. So there will be no painting involved, in case there's any questions.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Palmer.
I just want to be clear. First of all, I'm all in favor of it, but there'll be a question for Mike. How much is in the reserve and how long and where is that reserve?
That's one of our operating reserves at the end of fiscal just past March 2023. I believe it's $40,000 that it's up to. We put 5,000 a year into the reserve. So the 35 fits within the current available funds.
Others? Councillor Ingham.
Oh, Wendy. So how many of these thank you for that clarification, but how many of these pictures are there going to be? And is there going to be like room to grow on that wall?
I don't believe that if you looked at the diagram that's proposed, it covers most of the wall. And there's no new images coming from Alex Colville.
Well,
Right. Oh, would they be changed? That's a matter of some discussion. Yeah. He does have a lot, but the notion with the choice here was to be somewhat local. For example, the surveyor up on the Avenport Mountain looking down the local images, plus the iconic ones like like Rhoda with the binoculars on the PEI ferry, like, so it's a blend of local significance. He was a war artist, so that's included in the bio piece. So yeah, it's a selection that way.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Mr. Palmer?
So this is intended to be a permanent exposition. It's not meant to be 5 years or 2 years or anything.
Well, unlike a mural, which has
I love it.
a lifespan, no, I think this would be much longer lasting.
Counselor Butler?
The image is great, and I've seen the image a couple of times before. So the existing painting that's there will be stripped, I'm assuming. Okay, because it's very nice brickwork here, but I'm like, no, there's a painting there right now. So to get that, like the existing mural will be just taken down and the brick will all look the same before these get installed.
Yeah,
Okay.
the artwork that's on there
Yeah.
related to the town centennial, so it dates back to 1993.
Yeah.
Which was, it's amazing that any of it's still
Yeah.
there. So that's the plan, is to pressure wash it off.
Okay. And then my only other question was, in terms of just a little background about the piece, was there support from the existing family? Will there be like sort of an invite unveiling kind of a thing that they want to be a part of? Or how are they supporting and feeling about this? I think this is fantastic.
We've worked quite closely with the family. And they've approved the use of all of the images, even though some of them are located at the National Gallery or the War Museum. They've given us the okay for all of the pictures that have been chosen. And this is the 10th anniversary this year of Colville's death. So I would assume that we'd have some kind of an opening, stand around on the lawn and chat kind of event when it's all up and done.
Counselor Ingham?
Just so you're gonna get bombarded. Yeah, I'm just looking at the image closer as I zoom in. So is there gonna be like a big wayfinding sign that describes each photo or something when guests are coming or visitors are coming to know what this is all about?
There's two former door spaces that have been filled in with brick. One of them is going to be the portrait of Colville himself. And the other one is going to have the bio, which will indicate some of his history and what it's all about.
Question?
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
I didn't know I was
Yes, one more. AT, is that Director Lake? Or is it Director McLean? AT Network and Funding.
Similar to the RFT you just dealt with, it's before you right now, the AT, in relation to increasing the budget allotment. At the time that we did the budget, we hadn't had the indication of whether the grant was likely or not, so there was a smaller dollar amount included in the 10-year capital plan. Now that it looks like the pieces are falling in place to have the grant finalized, there'll be an announcement in the coming weeks. Staff can't proceed to work on a dollar level that reflects the leveraged funds through the grant program itself. So the motion before committee of the whole to go to council relates to increasing the budget allotment in year one. Future details and how this multi-year plan comes out later will be part of next year's capital budget iteration as we start those discussions. And time allowing, there's probably a chance to get an info report in front of this group in July, where Devin and Alex can work out some of the details, more particular of exactly what we envision in year one. There is some information in the RFD itself relative to the area for year one. This is simply to get the mechanism in place so that we can start to work on it and get those dollars and our reporting to the federal funders on a timely basis of what's going to happen this year. So it's that mechanic.
Counselor Ingham. Well, I think you're an alternate on one of the committees that this would normally come under. So. Okay.
I would move that the committee of the whole forward the following motion to council for decision. That council approve the amended 23-24 active transportation project spending level at 187,500 with the increased spending 137,500 more than the approved budget of 50,000 in year one to be funded by the way of the ICIP grant program. Keep reading. That council directs staff to incorporate the remaining program spending into the 2024-25 10-year capital improvement plan as part of the 2024-25 budget process.
Counselor Butler, are there any questions of staff or comments? Counselor Palmer.
I just want to be clear that there's no extra money that you're looking for other than that 50,000.
No extra money to come from the town dollars itself. And I guess the key to this is the piece that I think Devin in particular has been working hard to obtain, and as exciting as the parks plan is, I think this will now at the dollar level that we're leveraged become one of the key pieces of the discussion earlier today and some of the other meetings, including I even think last night's public hearing. So this will be nice to get out there and let people know what can happen.
Counselor Ingham. No. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's passed. All right, we are going to take a break for lunch. We are going to, during that time, go in camera, and once that's done, we will come back out of camera just for final committee reports and public input if there's any. So we are breaking for lunch and for an in camera right now.